The collective uprising, how Black women are rewriting the rules of success. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to begin by acknowledging the extraordinary woman whose work has fundamentally altered my understanding of what success can and should look like in America. Demesia Murray is not just a researcher or advocate, she is a visionary whose groundbreaking work is literally reshaping economic landscapes across this country. Through her relentless dedication to economic justice, she has illuminated pathways that aren't just changing individual lives, but transforming entire communities through collective empowerment. In a world obsessed with individual achievement, Demesia has courageously challenged us to see the revolutionary power of community centered success. We've all been sold a story about success in America, a narrative so compelling and pervasive that most of us have internalized it without question. The story goes something like this: success is individual. It's about your personal drive, your singular vision, your unique talents. We worship at the altar of the lone genius, the self made millionaire, the solitary entrepreneur who built an empire from nothing. This story isn't just powerful, it's intoxicating and it's fundamentally incomplete. What if I told you that the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs in America is not just challenging this narrative, they're shattering it completely? What if the most successful among them are succeeding not despite community, but precisely because of it? The data is clear and frankly revolutionary. Black women are currently driving the fastest growth in new business creation across America. But here's what's truly transformative about this trend: their success isn't primarily about individual grit or personal determination, though they certainly possess these qualities in abundance. Their success is increasingly built on something far more powerful: the intentional creation of collective ecosystems that amplify everyone's potential. This insight from my conversation with Demesia Murray doesn't just nudge our understanding of entrepreneurship, it completely upends it. Many of us assume the entrepreneurial journey is inherently solitary, a lone wolf pursuing a singular vision against all odds. But the most successful Black women entrepreneurs are deliberately creating networks of support, mentorship, and access to capital that benefit entire communities. This represents a profound shift from individual achievement to collective acceleration. It challenges traditional narratives around entrepreneurship and points toward a future where success is measured not just by personal milestones, but by how effectively we lift others as we climb. Let me share some remarkable findings from Demesia's research. Black women entrepreneurs are leading an unprecedented wave of business growth, outpacing other demographic groups in both firm creation and revenue increases. Yet they still face significant structural barriers around funding and resources that would crush most entrepreneurs before they even begin. The conventional wisdom would suggest that overcoming these barriers requires exceptional individual resilience. Work harder, be more determined, never give up. But Demesia's research reveals something more nuanced and infinitely more powerful. Building supportive ecosystems through mentorship, strategic partnerships, and shared resources isn't just helpful, it's essential for overcoming those barriers. Individual resilience alone is simply not enough. Perhaps most compelling is the economic impact of this approach. Closing racial gaps in access to capital would unlock massive economic benefits, not only for Black entrepreneurs, but for entire cities and communities through job creation and increased local revenue. Let me bring this to life with a powerful example that Demesia shared with me. At the 2025 WBENS conference in New Orleans, a city that itself symbolized resilience and rebirth. Black women owned businesses were highlighted for their remarkable growth. Their average revenues had jumped an astonishing 32.7% since 2019. Yet, despite this impressive momentum, these businesses face persistent gaps in loan approvals. Only 45% approval rate compared to 55% for men. Higher denial rates and limited access to large scale funding. What do they do in response? They didn't just work harder individually or accept these barriers as inevitable. Instead, they formed collectives focused on systemic change, peer mentorship circles, resource sharing platforms, and advocacy efforts targeting lenders' bias. This ecosystem approach led not only to increased revenues, but also more efficient market entry for new founders. What's particularly striking about this situation is the backstory. Driven by necessity during turbulent economic times post pandemic, many founders leaned into community based solutions rather than waiting for institutional support that might never come. Their growth outpaced all other demographics, and they built infrastructure supporting next generation founders with capital access pathways. The impact? They set a national example of how collective action can transform entrepreneurial outcomes, not just individual stories in marginalized communities. Consider another powerful example from Demesia's research, focusing on funding barriers among Black entrepreneurs. Between 2017 and 2025, loan approval rates among Black business owners rose modestly from around 4% up to a high of only 8% before dropping back down, a stark contrast with broader market trends. Many were discouraged from even applying due to low credit scores rooted in historic wealth disparities, with strict lender requirements further compounding these issues. The conventional approach would suggest that individual Black entrepreneurs simply need to improve their credit scores or business plans. But some organizations took a radically different approach, offering alternative financing models, community lending circles, or microloan programs tailored specifically for underrepresented founders to bridge gaps left by traditional banks. The results were remarkable. More businesses received crucial seed money they wouldn't have accessed otherwise. Some expanded operations or hired employees thanks directly to these grassroots financial tools. What's fascinating about this example is that persistent denials had created generational skepticism toward mainstream finance. But targeted interventions started rebuilding trust within affected communities over time. Thousands gained first time access to credit lines or microloans previously unavailable through conventional means, with a measurable uptick in small business launches following locally tailored outreach campaigns. The potential impact is staggering. If scaled nationally, and if parity were reached between the share of employer businesses owned by Blacks versus their population share, the US could see up to $824 billion more circulating annually, plus millions more jobs. A third powerful example from Demesia's work reveals the gender and race gaps on the startup pathway. A comprehensive analysis found that fewer than 1 out of 10 US entrepreneurs are Black, and among venture backed startups, less than 3% have a Hispanic or Black founder at the helm. Gaps persist throughout every stage, from launching firms at lower rates 22% less compared with whites, through higher failure rates, 20% higher, due largely to lack of early stage investment opportunities. In response, programs emerged pairing experienced angel investors and mentors with aspiring minority founders, plus educational boot camps demystifying investor relations. Although progress has been slow overall, female founded VC backed startups actually demonstrated higher exit rates than male counterparts when given equal opportunity and resources. Historically excluded from major investment networks due to both implicit bias and lack of representation among decision makers themselves, there's been incremental narrowing recently as more funds dedicate capital exclusively toward diverse led ventures. This demonstrates tangible benefits for investors as well as society in closing equity gaps across gender and race lines within entrepreneurship pipelines. Now, you might be thinking, this is interesting, but what does it have to do with me? I'm not a Black woman entrepreneur, but that's precisely the point. The insights from Demesia Murray's research challenge us all to reconsider our fundamental assumptions about success and achievement. They invite us to ask, what if the rugged individualism we've celebrated for so long is actually limiting our collective potential? What if the most powerful path to success isn't walking alone, but walking together? This isn't just about entrepreneurship. It's about how we approach challenges in every domain of life. It's about recognizing that the mythology of the lone genius has blinded us to the power of collaborative networks and supportive communities. Think about it. We've been taught that asking for help is a sign of weakness, that sharing resources means having less for ourselves, that success is a zero sum game where someone must lose for us to win. But what if these assumptions are not just incomplete, but actively harmful? What if they're preventing us from achieving the very success we seek? The evidence from Demesia's research suggests that when we shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, from competition to collaboration, from individual achievement to collective acceleration, we don't diminish our success, we multiply it. This isn't naive idealism, it's strategic wisdom backed by data. The most successful Black women entrepreneurs aren't succeeding despite helping others, they're succeeding because of it. By creating ecosystems of support, they're not just overcoming barriers, they're transforming entire markets. And here's what's truly revolutionary: this approach doesn't just benefit those who have been historically marginalized, it benefits everyone. When we expand access to capital, mentorship, and resources, we don't just create more successful Black women entrepreneurs, we create more innovation, more jobs, more economic growth, and more prosperity for all. So I challenge you today: reject the myth of the lone hero, embrace the power of collective rise, start asking different questions. Instead of how can I succeed, ask how can we succeed together? Instead of focusing solely on building your own skills and resources, consider how you can build networks and ecosystems that amplify everyone's potential. This doesn't mean abandoning personal responsibility or individual excellence. It means recognizing that our individual potential is magnified, not diminished, when we connect it to something larger than ourselves. The time has come to rewrite the rules of success, to recognize that the strongest among us aren't those who climb highest alone, but those who bring others with them. To understand that true power lies not in individual achievement, but in collective transformation. So I leave you with this call to action, inspired by the revolutionary insights of Demesia Murray. How will you leverage your networks, not just your skills, to create opportunities that uplift others alongside yourself? What concrete step will you take this week toward building an ecosystem where collective advancement becomes possible? And most importantly, how will you challenge the narrative of individual success that has limited our collective potential for far too long? Because in the end, the most powerful story of success isn't about climbing to the top alone. It's about building a mountain that raises everyone higher. It's not about being the first to reach the summit. It's about creating new paths that make the journey possible for many. This is the wisdom that Black women entrepreneurs are offering us. The question is, are we brave enough to listen? Are we courageous enough to reimagine success not as a solitary achievement, but as a collective uprising? Thank you